Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alicia and today I have a very special Tag Tuesday video because I'm actually doing two tags. I'm doing both the R and the S alphabet tags, both of which were originally created by Jim's Books, Reading and Stuff. For the R tag, I was tagged by Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot, and for the S tag, I was tagged by Shelly Swearingen. The first prompt for R is for reading. Why do you love reading? I grew up reading, so it's been something I've always done. I haven't sat and thought about like why I enjoy it, because I just do. But I think the main reason I enjoy it is I enjoy experiencing the world through different people's imaginations and what the world could be. Prompt number 2 is R is for Russia. Who's your favorite Russian writer? I do not have one, to my knowledge. I've never read a book by a Russian writer, actually, so that's definitely something I need to check out. But I googled a list of famous Russian writers, and I haven't read any of them, so I don't have an answer for this one. Next is R is for romance. What is your favorite romance novel? This is something to talk about by Merrill Wilsner. Romance is something I don't read a whole lot of, and this, of the sparse number of romances I have read, has been my favorite by far. Next is R is for Renoir. Do you have a favorite Renoir painting? First of all, I hope I'm saying that correctly, or at least semi-correctly. Second of all, I definitely don't have a favorite Renoir painting. I honestly don't even know if I saw a Renoir painting, if I could be like, I know who painted that. I'm not much of an art fan. When I go to museums, I can appreciate it, but it's not something that I'm like, I don't have like art prints in my home of famous paintings. There are some exceptions that I would have of like, obviously like very famous paintings. Like I would happily have a print of Starry Starry Night in my home and things like that, but I know I should know who Renoir is, and I don't. R is for Regency. Do you have a favorite book written in the Regency period, which is 1811 to 1820, other than by Jane Austen? No. Honestly, you could include Jane Austen in this, and I do not have a favorite book from that time. I have not read most of Jane Austen's work. I actually haven't finished any Jane Austen book, and I don't really read books from that time period. So this is a hard no from me. Next is R is for Roman a Clef. Tell us about a Roman a Clef you like. So I definitely had to Google this. Even though Sandy talked about it in her video, I still had to Google it because I forgot what it was between then and now. And I even Googled famous Roman a Clef novels, and I haven't read any of them. So I do not have a favorite Roman a Clef novel. Next is R is for Rustaveli, the most revered Georgian writer. Have you heard of him? I have not. I'm gonna have to look into him. And then it says the last prompt is a little different. Imagine you're isolated in a log cabin with no internet and no Kindle. In the cabin there are books by the following writers beginning with R: Racine, Kathy Reichs, Anne Rice, Ian Rankin, Ruth Rendell, Arundhati Roy, J.K. Rowling, and Salman Rushdie. Whose books would you read first and whose would you leave to last? You can also rank the authors if you wish by personal preference. So the first one I would read is definitely Salman Rushdie. I've heard a lot about his writing and how good it is, mostly from my husband, who is a writer and likes to talk about writers. So I'd read Salman Rushdie first, and I would leave Anne Rice to the end, just because everything I've heard about Anne Rice's novels do not sound like they match with my reading tastes. Those are all the prompts for the R tag. I just gotta say, I feel like I failed. I know you can't fail this tag, but I feel like I had a lot of no's. Isn't that right, Breldon? Breldon also had a lot of no's. Honestly, I should just call this tag video spilling the beans on how poorly read in classics I am. because I feel like I would have more answers for these if I actually ever read a classic. Next, we're going to jump right into the S tag, and the first prompt for the S tag is S is for science fiction. Which science fiction author have you read the most books by? So this would either be Becky Chambers or Tad Williams, both of whom, well, I guess technically Tad Williams, because Tad Williams wrote a sci-fi series called Otherland, which I loved. It's 4 books. But I've also read other Tad Williams books, even though they technically weren't sci-fi. So if you're going only sci-fi books, I have read 4 Tad Williams and 4 Becky Chambers. But if you're going based on just books that they have written, even if they're not sci-fi, I've read more Tad Williams because I've read 7, technically 7, I think, Tad Williams books. Even though one of the books was split into 2 parts. I'm going to count it as the 1 book. Next is S is for Star Trek. Which is your favorite Star Trek series? I do not have one. I have never sat down and watched Star Trek like all the way through. I have seen it as it's been on in my house. I don't watch a lot of TV. I've seen some of the Star Trek movies. I don't really like to watch movies except for like Halloween movies. I get really, really into Halloween movies. But other than that, like, I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't really watch movies. So Star Trek is not something I've ever really gotten into. Next is S is for school story. What is your favorite book in a school setting? And for that, I'm picking The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This book doesn't 100% take place in a school setting, but there is a school setting as a large part of it, and I honestly just really loved this book. I've read it a couple times now. I've actually only listened to this. I've never read the physical copy, and the audiobook that I've listened to, I've absolutely adored. So, Name of the Wind. Very, very well done. I, like many, many other people, am trying to be patient in the never-ending wait for the 3rd book. S is for satire. What is your favorite satirical novel? For this, I picked Kill the Farm Boy by Delilah S. Dawson and Kevin Hearn. This is a satirical novel that just plays on all of the tropes of fantasy. So I think the back really summarizes this book really well and gives you an idea of what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and read that. And it says, once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, a hero, the chosen one, was born. And so begins every fairy tale ever told. This is not that fairy tale. There is a chosen one, but he is unlike anyone who has ever been chosen. And there is a faraway kingdom, but you've never been to a magical world quite like the land of Pel. There, when a quest goes painfully awry, it is up to a talking goat, a mighty warrior who resents her chainmail bikini, an assassin with a fear of chickens, and a cursed fuzzy-tailed bard to set everything aright. Beset by evils and the Dark Lord Toby, this intrepid company journeys toward the most peculiar happily ever after that ever once upon a time. I read a handful of satirical books. I actually have a bind-up of the first 4 books in the Myth Adventures series by Robert Lynn Asprin. And of the ones I've read, Kill the Farm Boy has been my favorite. And if you're looking for a good satire, I would definitely recommend this one. The Log Cabin prompt. You are in a log cabin with no internet and no Kindle. In the log cabin there are 4 books. Scarlet Sins by Dane Cobain, The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wong, The Accidental by Ali Smith, and City by Clifford D. Simak. Which book do you start reading? The book I start reading is definitely The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wong. It is on my TBR. I hear it's really good. So, definitely going to pick that one up. Next asks, which book will you give as a gift to a booktuber, and which booktuber? I think I'm going to say The Accidental. I'm giving it to Shelly Swearingen, because I just watched Shelly's video and she said that is the one she would start reading first. So I'm going to gift it to her in my version. It is a little cold in the cabin. Which book would you burn in the hearth for warmth? This would definitely be Scarlet Sins by Dan Cobain because I looked into what City is about and it actually looks kind of interesting. So City is going to be the book that I leave for the next visitor. S is for Steinbeck. Which is your favorite Steinbeck novel? Of Mice and Men. It is the only one I've read, and therefore is my favorite. S is for Sartre. Is Sartre worth reading? I do not know. I've never read anything by Sartre, so I do not know if their books are worth reading. S is for Shakespeare. Which is your favorite Shakespeare play? I think I'm going to go with Hamlet, because that was my favorite play in high school. I've read a handful of Shakespeare since then, but I have not reread Hamlet. So Hamlet has not yet been dethroned as my favorite Shakespeare play. What was the last Shakespeare play you saw performed at the theater? So the last one I saw performed was not actually in a theater. It was on a stage outside. It was a play in the park when I was in Los Angeles with my sister, and we went and saw, I believe it was A Midsummer's Night's Dream performed in the park. It was very fun. That was also like 10 years ago. So it has been a while since I've seen any Shakespeare performed live, but it was very fun when I went. S is for Stalin. Stalin was a monster, but does he have any redeeming qualities? I don't know. S is for short story. What is your preferred length of fictional reading material? I am a fan of any length. I have read books of like 100 or less than 100 pages all the way to over 1,000. So I like any length, and I think my preferred length depends on the story being told and the author. I've already mentioned Ted Williams in this video, and I feel like Ted Williams is a very good example of writing very long books that I like that they're that long. Other authors couldn't get away with it, and I also don't know if I would like Ted Williams if he wrote books that were like 200 pages, because I don't feel like you would get the same story setup that you get in his books because they're so long. On the flip side, a book like Kill the Farm Boy, this is the perfect length for this book. I would not want to read a satire like this that's over 1,000 pages. It just would not work for me. So that all being said, I do have data on my reading, and according to the data, I slightly prefer books under 300 pages, with books 300 to 499 pages in second and 500 plus in third. Those are the three broad categories. It's below 300, 300 to 499, and 500 plus. So according to the data, I read more books that are less than 300 pages. Now, there's always the question and the conversation you can get into of enjoyment of those books, and did the length work? Are there books I wish would have been longer, and all of that? I'm not gonna get into that right now. I'm just going to say my tracking shows I tend to read books that are short. Shelly also added some prompts to this, and I wanted to do some of them because I think it's going to be fun. S is for sugar. What is your favorite dessert? I think it's Bananas Foster. I've only had it once when I was in Disneyland a few years ago, and it just lives in my memory as being one of the most delectable things I've ever eaten in my life. I don't know if that's because the dessert was very good and as good as I remember it, although I remember it being fantastic, but also I was with my family. We were there for the new year, and it was just a fun time and a fun environment, and I maybe enjoyed the dessert more than I would have if circumstances were different, and it is definitely possible that my memory of the dessert is being influenced by the fact that I was just enjoying myself so much. S is for shoes. What's a book that made you feel as if you walked in another person's shoes? Transcendent Kingdom by Yasi. This book just felt so real to me, and it felt like I was reading a memoir, And it made me feel like I was walking in my shoes as well as other people's shoes, both like people I know who have had similar experiences to some of the things described in this book, and also just walking in the shoes of Gifty, our main character. So, yes, I loved this, and I definitely felt like I was in so many different shoes throughout this book. S is for Shuffled Story. Have you ever read a shuffled story? I have not, and Shelly showed a shuffled story in her video. That was a lot of S's. Shelly showed a shuffled story in her video, and they look really fun. So if you are watching my video and haven't watched Shelly's, go check it out. Go see what the shuffled story is. Again, that applies with all of the videos mentioned. I'm going to have Jim's original tags as well as Sandy's and Shelly's tags linked in the description. Go check them all out. S is for shopping. Where's your favorite place to buy books? My favorite place are my local bookstores. I have one local bookstore that I absolutely love and adore that only has new books. So if I'm pre-ordering a book, if I'm like, I'm going to go buy myself a new book, I try to get it from that store. They have been around in this community for a while. When I am doing Libro FM, which I've paused my Libro FM membership for right now, but when I am doing Libro FM, that's the bookstore I support. I just love that bookstore a lot. It's called the King's English. It's a really great little store here in my area. There's another bookstore I really like that's a local store that has both new and used books. So I go there if I want maybe a little bit more of a deal, or if I'm wanting to browse and I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Normally I go to the King's English. I actually mostly order online from the King's English, and I know what I want. When I know what I want, I'm like, okay. When I don't know what I want, I go to the other one. Unfortunately, my favorite store for a while no longer has a storefront in the same spot, and pre-pandemic they were planning on opening another storefront. I have not heard if they have gone forward with that in the light of everything that's been happening. That's actually something I need to look into. That was a really wonderful store. It was massive. It was mostly used books, and it was absolutely ginormous. It was 2 stories. And the top floor wasn't quite as big as the bottom floor. I think there was a downstairs too. I never went downstairs though, because the sci-fi and fantasy were upstairs / on the stairs. There were books everywhere. Yeah, the sci-fi and fantasy were upstairs. And there were books like lining the staircases as you would go up. It was huge. So I would go there and they would have this wall. Like, their sci-fi and fantasy section was bigger than any other bookstore I've ever been in, I think. It was a huge store. I'm so sad they don't have that storefront anymore. Honestly, it was very upsetting. The closing sale for that storefront was great. That is where we got a lot of books. That's where we got our fancy editions of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, because they were discounted. But I'm very upset that they moved, because it was, for a period of time, it was like a block from where I worked, and every payday I would go there after work and buy books, because I have no shelf control. For the R tag, I'm going to go ahead and tag Rachel's Reading Nook and Katrina Reads. 2 tags in a row, Katrina. I'm sorry, but also not sorry, because both of their channel names have R's in them, which is why I picked it for the R tag. And for the S shelf, I'm going to go ahead and tag Alice in the Giant Bookshelf because of the S. As always, no pressure if you don't feel like doing these tags and I tag you. That's totally fine. And if you want to do these tags and I didn't tag you, you can consider yourself tagged by me. That is everything for today. Thank you so much for watching. Down in the comments, let me know what your answer would be to any of these questions that were in this tag video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!